Why is it still happening? How do you know if you are the victim? And what can you do to prevent this from happening to you? Joining us today to talk about equal pay is Jack Tuckner, one of the leading attorneys from Women's Rights New York, a progressive law firm dedicated to the empowerment of women in the workplace. Hi Jack, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Amy.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Women's Rights New York and what you do there.
Well, we are a small civil rights firm dedicated to issues of women's challenges in the workplace, such as Equal Pay Act discrimination, pregnancy discrimination, one of the largest causes of action out of our office, sexual harassment, and anything related to unequal treatment at work, and not just for women. Anyone who is suffering what's known as disparate treatment can seek out a law firm such as ours, but we specialize, if you will, in issues that principally affect women.
How does one know that they are a victim of wage discrimination? Because oftentimes we don't know each other's salaries.
Well, you probably know you're a victim of wage discrimination if you're a woman. I mean, that's the short answer because
Good point.
Because women are paid 77 cents to 80 cents, depending upon the study in the year, on the dollar to what men earn for substantially equal work. So that's a given. In terms of how you find out if someone in your workplace who's doing the substantially same job as you are is making more money because he's a guy, you probably won't know, and you're not entitled to know. That's another one of our challenges in our culture. Certainly, if you do determine that, or even if you suspect that, you're still entitled to complain about it, and perhaps the investigation would lead to their telling you whether it is or isn't true.
So what if you do complain? I was in a situation where I was being paid significantly less than my male counterpart doing the same exact job, same exact title, and when I went to complain, I was told that it was none of my business, that I shouldn't even be bringing it up, that I should be lucky I have a job. Do you know, what would you do in that situation?
Well, if once you complain to your employer, whoever the employer is and however large they are, although depending upon how many employees there are, the different laws apply. But if you complain in your workplace that you feel that you're being treated differently from other similarly situated employees, in other words, that whether it's a hostile work environment because of your gender or some term or condition or benefit or privilege or pay of your employment is different from someone else, and it shouldn't be, the company has an obligation under the various so-called human rights laws to investigate.
Right.
And they have to investigate, and then if they find that what you're saying is potentially true, they have to launch corrective action. They have to do something about it. And they're not allowed to make it worse for you as a result of the complaint. That is legally known as retaliation for the civil rights invocation. So if it's rising to the level in your workplace where you feel, you know, this isn't right, and I think I can't work this out by having a cup of coffee with my manager, or the person who is either hitting on me or not paying me enough, it's just not working on an interpersonal basis. The only option you have, and it's required, is to complain formally, in writing, in a provable fashion, period.
To HR or to?
Well, to the powers that be. Typically the powers that be, and the right person is usually the director or the vice president of human resources, but if you're in a smaller company, it's really anyone with the authority to do something about it, hire, fire, make changes. So whatever we talk about tonight is still going to come down to, if you're being discriminated against, you can't wait until something happens bad to you, like they put you on probation. You can't wait till you're fired and then come see me, and that's what often happens. People come after the horse has galloped away, they're closing the barn door. You know, you're $1 short and a day late then.
How often does higher management get involved?
Well, they get involved all the time when you do it the right way. In other words, what gives you the juice, to use a legal term here in New York, is that once you formally complain in a way, you send a letter by FedEx if you have to, let's say, or an email that says, please be advised, in effect. I feel that ever since I told this company that I'm pregnant, my boss is doing this, I'm no longer in the email loop, I'm no longer invited to golf outing, whatever. They have to investigate it, and if they don't, you now have a paper trail that they not only are, in a sense, conceding what you probably said and is presumptively true, But by definition, that could be considered retaliation. So what gives you all the leverage, and no one really sort of understands this until you kind of empower yourself with this knowledge, the leverage all comes from being aware of what the law says and doesn't say, and then acting upon it in a way that you could prove that you're trying to take optimal care of yourself in the workplace. You can't rely on the kindness of strangers in the workplace either.
Well, the situation you had mentioned, at some point, did they make it a hostile, as they say, environment for you?
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
you complained?
Absolutely, and that's why I asked. I mean, I did bring it to the powers that be, and there was no investigation. So how do, in a smaller company that,
Well,
if it's family run, or maybe it's a situation where everyone's very tight,
well, how small were
how
they?
would you,
Well, does that
30 people.
Well, 30 people, by the way, it's small, but it's covered by every conceivable law except the Family Medical Leave Act. So it's certainly covered by federal, state, and at least in New York, state and
Yes.
local law, and most states have their own human rights law. If they make it worse for you and create a hostile work environment because you complained, and they're like, you're lucky you have a job, and now that you're whining,
Yeah.
you better grow eyes in the back of your head,
Yeah.
because we're going to make it difficult for you. Had you complained in the appropriate way, not at the water cooler or in the elevator or
Right.
verbally, had you written the letter saying the same thing, but just documenting it, and it could have been, didn't have to be, please be advised and I'll see you in court. It could be a letter just saying, I'm really troubled by what's going on here and it's really bothering me. And I want to talk about it. But you're using some of the right words. You can't just say my boss is mean, or everybody's
Right.
a tyrant and I don't feel you're valuing me. This isn't a personal relationship. You have to talk about discrimination. That's all there ever is. Differential treatment. You got to use that word in one respect or another.
Why
And
do you think this discrimination occurs?
why does it occur? Well, discrimination against, it occurs, I think, because people will always, in our culture, I think we have a tendency to abuse power because it's all about money from start to finish. So if someone is in a position, for instance, I think women in general are not in harmony with growth and expansion and sort of corporate greed and the general motivation of most companies, the feminine principle. Women that have to then leave often and somehow take care of a family and are not just all about the job. If we're talking about gender discrimination, obviously it might be different for every other reason why people are, crazy and mean-spirited.
Right.
And
Gender specifically.
Women are not regarded very well. Are they? Women are not as equally placed in our culture, any culture, yet. Long way to go. And I think that even with an equal pay issue, men often feel if you make the same amount of money as I do, this job really can't be very valuable. I mean, it bothers me. Firemen lots of men in male jobs, when women started encroaching upon them, said, but I'm a guy.
So in other words, it's like their egos are
It's all
challenged.
it's ego. I have a family. Maybe that back to what has historically been. But I have the mortgage to pay. I have 2 kids. My wife, is a secondary income or stay at home, and you don't have that. So you shouldn't make as much as I do. I mean, this is built into the fabric of our culture in every possible way. It's nothing we could unravel tonight with one thread. It is, we call it. I mean, whether it's misogynistic or it's simply the way that we've all been brought up in this patriarchy, and it is that.
So let me ask you this. If women are in management, do you see that in those particular jobs there is more equal pay?
No.
No?
No.
Still discrimination.
There's discrimination on every level. I represented an attorney who made a lot of money, but she made a lot less than her comparably situated male comparator.
What
No question.
happened?
It's from.
What was the outcome?
The outcome on that case, which often is the outcome on many cases where women feel the need to take some kind of action, at the end of the day, sort of literally and figuratively, they separate from this employer. There are irreconcilable differences. The marriage can't be saved, and they leave. But instead of leaving on their knees, crawling away with a cup in their hand, so to speak, they're able to leave in a dignified way with their head held high and their shoulders squared and a severance package. And the ability to say, I held this company accountable, I held their feet to the fire, it might not happen to the next woman after me now. That's my legacy, that's what I tell my kids. And you know what? Everything happens for a reason and purpose and ultimately serves us. And I won't go quietly to my rest, but I'll just ride off into the sunset knowing that I took some action and took care of myself. And that is heroic, even if it's not media worthy and it's not on the front page of the New York Post.
Do you think when companies are setting the guidelines for salary requirements, initially there's a discrimination factor put into determining that salary?
You know, I don't know, Anita, if it's you know, sort of willful and conscious that we're going to pay the girls less and it's so inbred. You know, like the pink ghetto jobs that we all sort of know about, the girl jobs, and that's why teachers who are molding souls are making nothing compared to what the masters of the universe that have just put us in the place that we're in now and ripped us all off and you know have stolen our money to the tune of how many tens of millions of dollars. I mean, the world is insane. But to try to answer the question, I don't know that there, you know, when it comes to secretarial or administrative jobs that are going to be generally filled by women, you know that there's a certain salary parameters to it. You're not paying six figures for it. I mean, clearly there are distinction, you know, there are lawyers, female lawyers that are making, you know, they're going to come into their class and they're going to get the same salary as men, and it's not everywhere, and great strides have been made. I mean, in the history of, you know, human beings, clearly in the last several decades. In the first and second waves of feminism, look what's gone on. But what's happening now, it seems to me, there's a general backlash. Where is sort of feminism, however we want to describe it, now? We're back to Miss America pageant is alive and well. You know, do you want to marry a millionaire? I mean, all the there is, and I think it's part and parcel of the culture of money that we have become since sort of the Reagan years onward. It's all we're America Incorporated, bottom line, and so. We've really lost, I don't know where, I'm not certain where the fire is in the sort of collective belly in most civil rights movements, but certainly for feminism. There's been some of that is kind of lost now, maybe emerging in different places like here and on the internet and Girlista and all these different, but the general sort of third wave of feminism, it's not what it was, and you're all too young to remember how awesome it was in the late 60s and the early 70s and the huge strides that were made in advancing women's rights. Women, we're not talking about this. This is a minority, the most majority minority we could think of on the planet. And, you know, we don't seem to care very much.
Would it help to have an agent or a headhunter if you're a woman, especially?
I mean, to find a good job?
A, to find a good job, and to find a good job. B, to find a good job that pays, you know,
Well,
significantly
yes.
higher.
If you could command the services of a headhunter, meaning that you're not, you know, you're someone who's got your headhunter-worthy skill set, so you're a professional and whatever stripe, sure, headhunters. It doesn't change, I think, anything we're talking about, but women are placed with, you know, by headhunters, and again, this is not perhaps as dreary as I might make it sound. I live in this world, so I sort of talk about it all the time, that if we could raise the status of women generally and individually, the world would be a much better place. And in fact, the world won't be a better place until that happens.
There are a lot of job postings out there on the internet where they actually list the numbers you would, you know, you would be earning, the salary you would potentially be earning if you did get hired. For example, I've seen numbers like $60,000, $70,000. You're saying that you have seen many cases where if that particular job is given to a male instead of a woman, that a man being hired in that position would probably earn more, even though the salary's posted out there?
No, probably not in that situation. Although you never know what happens, and if someone comes in who's already earning a higher salary, that's another constant. Men who already have previously higher salaries than the women could command will come in and say, "But I'm not working for this amount," and they'll change that if they want him, and you'll never know about that. And I believe that does also happen all the time. But you know. There are jobs that, of course, men and women are making the same amounts of money if they're posted. Government jobs, obviously, at certain levels.
You gave kind of a bleak outlook when you were speaking of the difference between men and women and how much they make. So how can we get from point A, where we are right now, to point B, where there is equal pay, where it's $1 from $1, not 80 cents to $1? What are the steps that we can do?
Well, I'm saying individually the steps are just sort of, and that's really what it always kind of comes down to, other than legislation and evolution and millennium more, you know, look how long it's taking. By the way, all these laws, they are taking forever to be passed. They're pretty meaningless. They're effective as they now stand. The Equal Pay Act doesn't really have much heft to it for a lot of different reasons. And the Lilly Ledbetter situation was, a disaster. But individually, one has to be willing to, unfortunately, step up. You really have to. If you're going to go quietly, to your, sort of quietly in and out and say, I am lucky I have a position, nothing will ever change, at least on an individual level. So you do have to be willing, and not everybody can do that, and especially in this economy. I wouldn't tell everyone, you think you're making less money, complain to your company. They probably will fire you. I'm not telling anyone to do that. One does have to balance. Work is very important, and the employers still hold all the cards legally. Well, they hold all the cards. They have everything on their side. The laws, the courts, time. We have all the burdens of production and so-called production, persuasion, and proof. We have to prove that what the company did was illegal. There's no such thing as it's not nice, it's wrongful discharge, doesn't exist in New York. We have to prove that we're being treated just illegally, that it violates federal law. So, it's not going to happen certainly overnight. It's going to, and if it's in our lifetimes, from our mouths to goddess's ears, right?
I like that. But we actually have to wrap up on that note, but thank you for providing that call to action. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of women. It helped us. And we'll come back to you when we talk about sexual harassment.
Thank you.
Coming out inside the ladies' locker room. So much stuff for all of us to talk about. Coming out inside the ladies' locker room. Coming out inside the ladies' locker room.
Veronica. Oh,
Hey, Bob. How's it going?
I gotta talk. I'm having a really messed up day.
I'm swamped too.
No, I'm just emotionally distraught right now. I'm really confused. Johnson's just been riding me all day.
Are you alright?
I don't know. I just feel like I'm gonna explode for real.
Just breathe.
No, I understand.
He can make you crazy.
Your day's okay though? You good?
Yeah, I'm just swamped trying to get all this stuff done.
Hey, I was thinking, after work, that Applebee's around the corner?
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe we could go get a drink and maybe that steak and mushroom
Let's
meal.
do it. Let's do it. I
You
can
down?
use a drink after
Okay.
all of this work.
So it's a date.
Definitely.
All right,
So
awesome.
I'll see you after work.
See you later.
Take care.
Vicky. Hey.
Bob, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Did
Good.
you hear?
What?
I got the promotion.
Really?
Yeah, executive director. Give me the high five.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you know it. You know
Good
it.
for you.
So, I was thinking, remember that time we went to Applebee's?
Mm-hmm.
And then, afterwards I walked you home and I went for the kiss and you turned and gave me the cheek.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe we could have some kind of arrangement,
What kind of an arrangement?
Well, I got this promotion now. I'm thinking we could go out to Applebee's again and then hang out a little longer after time,
Thanks for the invite, Bob. I just have so much work. I have all these contracts to
Well,
take care of.
it is in my responsibility to hire an assistant, and an assistant for me would make more than you're making now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about it more maybe over lunch tomorrow at
Okay,
an earlier
okay.
time. That would work better.
That sounds good. I'm sure we could work something out. Hey, Vicky.
Oh, hey, Bob, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Is this your order?
Yeah.
Mind if I have a sip? Thank you.
So how's the new position?
Oh, it is so great. Oh, it is so great. I have so much more free time, less
Yeah.
work. I love it. I'm getting more money,
That's nice.
My secretary is horrible, though. I really wish you took that position,
Yeah, it's, I'm just so overwhelmed, and for them
Overwhelmed?
to hire someone else to do
Take
all
care
of
that
this.
there. So, the thing is about this job, you really can't take it home with you,
Yeah.
Somebody like you, you're just like stressing your head out too much. You have a great body from head to toe. I really think you need to utilize that more, if you know what I mean.
Thanks.
Oh, this feels good right here. You like that?
Yeah,
Wanna
I'm
go
just,
lower?
no, I actually have to
Why
go.
don't you just sit back,
No,
relax, and let me see.
No. I actually just got a massage yesterday, but thank you.
two of the scenarios demonstrated are obvious cases of sexual harassment. Office romance is completely acceptable and must be in accordance with companies' policies. But now less and less people date their coworkers because they fear a sexual harassment lawsuit. What are the biggest misconceptions about sexual harassment in the office? We turn back to Mr. Jack Tuckner to answer some of the questions for us. So we talked to you earlier off camera about office romance, and you informed me that it can happen, but between two people on the same level. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, it can happen, and it obviously does happen, and it will always happen. It's not so much about romance per se, obviously romance, and it's not really about sexuality, and it's not about sexual activity. It's about power and the abuse of power. So if you're having an office romance, if you will, with an equal colleague who doesn't have anything on you in terms of power or seniority, not your boss, if the relationship sours, it's probably not much of an issue. I mean, you're both just wherever you are in this company's hierarchy, and it can happen. Nobody's going to care, really. It doesn't create a corporate liability, and it's all about the company. It's not about any individuals. It's about what the company does or doesn't do about unwelcome. It's always the unwelcome sex-based advances or unwelcome sex-based energy that you're fending off. So most typically, and it's about a supervisor or manager on a lesser powerful person, and that's almost always, still in our culture, male on female. And so therefore you're in a quandary. It's an economic bind, because once you're in this relationship, you don't have the option, the freedom of simply saying, you know what, I don't like you anymore and I'm out of here. Because you could do that, and you will do that, but then there may be retaliation from this person who didn't want to end the relationship.
If there's sexual harassment going on in the office, maybe you could just give us a few examples, because I know a lot of people aren't sure if they're being sexually harassed or they think they may be. Could you give us a few examples of what sexual harassment is or isn't?
I think it's pretty clear. You know you're being sexually harassed if you're being sexually harassed. When you don't know and you say, I'm not sure I'm being sexually harassed, I think that's just fear. It's talking inside of you, should I take some action or not? Or what level of action should I take? Right. Because I'm not happy, I'm uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, your discomfort should be a fairly powerful signal.
Should be a red flag.
That's a red flag that this is probably an inappropriate overture that's coming your way that you shouldn't have to deal with in a workplace.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Well, I mean, there are the obvious examples of what used to be called quid pro quo sexual harassment. It's not called that anymore, but the same elements apply. You are being asked to provide some sexual favor. It doesn't have to be a full-blown sexual activity. It might be that you're being asked to play, if you will, in work. You're being flirted with, and you're supposed to respond in the way that the flirter expects you to be flirtatious back, to bat your eyelashes, or do whatever it is to make this person feel sexy and powerful and masculine, whatever. In return for you going along to get along with your male overseer who is playing with you in a sexual way, you know when you're being responded to and related to as an object of desire and not anything to do with your skill set in this company.
I know you have a story about a young lady that graduated from Catherine Gibbs School.
Right. I have a lot of stories. This one, which is fairly, I think, crystallizes it most clearly. A woman, 20 years old, graduates from secretarial school, gets a job in Wall Street, very entry-level salary, is assigned immediately to a powerful rainmaker male who is making many, many times what she earns. He decided that he was in love with her, and he was molesting her, he was sexually abusing her at work. But, you know, I think, and we've had many cases in the past, that fall into this area. He was physical with her. He pulled her onto his lap in the office, and she said that he, had an erection. He would kiss her, and in the elevator, and and stick his tongue in her mouth. He called her at home drunk and said, I'm leaving my wife, I want to be with you only. He was 28 years older than her, and she clearly was going out of her mind. She complained to Human Resources, which was the right thing to do. In her case, when she complained, she tape recorded it secretly. We should all know here it's legal in New York and in other one-party consent jurisdictions, so-called, to tape record your conversation with 1, 2, 3, 100 people without notifying them that you're taping them, as long as one person in the room is consenting. The one person who's consenting is you. So she could have sent that letter that I talked to you about off camera. But instead she taped it. So the HR woman said, we're shocked, we can't believe it, not Joe, we have to look into it. Listen, go home, it's Friday afternoon, take the rest of the day off, Monday, don't come in, call us, and we'll tell you what we are going to do, because we've never had to deal with this before, we're in shock. Monday she called, 9 o'clock, tape recording that as well, and said, okay, what's going on? I haven't slept all weekend, what are you going to do? She said, look, Joe denies it. It's a he said, she said. He's been here 16 years. You've been here 4 months. There's no proof. There's no corroboration. There's no email. What do you want us to do? We can't.
What do you mean
do anything.
proof? Wasn't it
It was
taped?
tape recorded.
You said
No,
it
no,
was-
the tape recording was the complaint
Oh,
Oh, the
to Human
complaint,
Resources.
okay.
Would have been different if she had been able to tape record or knew to do that.
right. Okay.
So they let her go. The upshot was they said, here's your 2 weeks' pay. We're sending you your sneakers that are under your desk, and goodbye. And we'll give
Does
you a
that
reference
happen
letter.
often?
Yes.
More often than
Wow.
not. It seems.
Well, less so these days because companies are becoming much more aware of the exposure and liabilities they face for doing that. But that was a fairly classic example of unwanted quid pro quo sexual harassment. You want to work here, you're going to do what I want you to do. And then when she complained, she was fired.
So she did the necessary steps, complained to HR,
Right.
and then she came to you. Is that the time where you should, if there's no response from HR, is that when you seek an attorney?
Well, she, I believe, came to me before she went to HR, which is why
Okay.
she knew to go to HR.
Oh, okay.
Because when people come to me in the state where I'm still working, as she was, and what do I do with him? You know what I tell them? What I told her. Complain. You have to. So whether you do it the way she did it, if you're in a place where you're allowed to tape record, that's quite powerful. She was weeping inconsolably to this HR woman. It's powerful. I mean, that's all admissible in a courtroom. Had she just sent a letter, it would have had the same effect. They have to investigate it, and they can't treat her worse as a result of the complaint. That gives you a lot of leverage. They may fix it, they may not. One quick other point on this. I received a call from a lawyer recently who said, a woman's working at Verizon, her boss is grabbing her buttocks every day. Isn't that a great case? How much money can we make, etc.? And I said to this attorney, has she yet complained? And he said, from what I understand, no, because she's afraid to. And I said, until she complains, it's meaningless. Because when and if she complains, it's not about this jerk who is, he's not going to get in trouble. The only thing that's going to happen to him, you can't even sue him under federal law. All you're allowed to, he could be arrested. He could have been arrested for sexual abuse. But that's a criminal issue. Had she gone to Verizon and complained and they ran this guy out of town on a rail, they fired him, game over. It's game over. There's no case
So
because they've done what they're supposed to
When
do.
someone files a complaint with the EEOC, Equal Employment
Right.
Opportunity Commission, or files a lawsuit, sexual harassment lawsuit, why does it seem that a lot of employers seem to take it out? Why does it seem as it, like a lot of employers tend to fire employees after after that employee complains and uses performance? You weren't performing, we have to let you go because of performance issues. Why do they seem to take that chance?
Because it's part of the cost-benefit analysis. We don't want you here in our sanctuary. We don't want you here in the workplace with your finger on the pulse and with access to our server when you're our enemy. You are a pariah. You're suing us or you're threatening to sue us. You are a huge distraction. We want you out. So if we can't negotiate you out swiftly, we're going to fire you, and we'll see what comes. And most of the time, it's a good bet. Much of the time, that we got her out, and now we'll just deal with whatever the consequences are. The consequences are often not that great.
A lawsuit, generally.
And a lawsuit, generally, or what they'll have to pay to settle a lawsuit. It's kind of the cost of doing business.
And
And they're not happy after someone complains.
And as in the case of this young lady who was she was working for a very powerful man. Let's say that's her life's goal. She wants to become an executive assistant. And he's a very powerful man. Who's to say that who's to say, okay, this guy Joe is not going to pick up the phone and call one of his friends at another, firm and, say, look, don't hire this woman.
Nothing that, I'm sure that does happen. In big cities, though, where Joe doesn't know where she's gone, and the company has to give her and will give her a reference that won't hurt her generally at the end of any, even without legal action. Most companies provide these days verifications of employment only. They don't bother going out of their way to hurt you because they're saying to themselves, take her, better you than us. We don't want her. Because also, if you prevent this employee who is left from getting another job, from being gainfully employed, number one, that's retaliation and is a cause of action. And number two, her damages increase. If she gets her damages meaning what she's lost, her harms that the company may have to pay for. If she gets another job right away making similar money, it could be a principal issue, a so-called Pyrrhic victory. What money do you get from a jury if you win when you've lost, let's say, 2 months' pay before you got another job?
Chuck, we have to wrap up, but before we go, thank you for being
You're
with
welcome.
us. And just out of curiosity, I would think at least that there would be a woman sitting here. Why do you think that there are so many men fighting for women's rights in the workplace?
Well, there aren't so many men fighting for women's rights in the workplace.
Why
But
are
you're
you
here.
fighting? Yeah, why are you
here?
fighting?
Well, I think that's probably, I don't know that I have a soundbite answer for that. For me, I've always been a radically liberal left-wing person who wants to add some value to this planet, and it seems to me that women deserve to have their cause championed. I think the question is, why is it that a middle-aged white male is the only person doing this? That's really one of the bigger issues. Where are the droves of women who should be stepping up and doing this as well? So I think it's a complicated answer, but I don't know that it should make much of a difference at this point. It's certainly it's a bona fide question. I don't have an easy answer for, a pat answer why I'm doing it, that I'm a male. Yes, I'm doing it for my daughters is one of the reasons, so that they will grow up in a place with the most opportunity. Why have children? If we devalue women, how is it that my daughter, who you've all met tonight, who's in one of them, who's in this room, why should she have less opportunity, and why should she lose? They say if she becomes a lawyer, she'll make $2 million less during her career than a man with the same job. That's a statistic that's that's out there and I didn't just make up. So why should that be? Why should she be short-shrifted and have less value in this world than it would have been had I had a son?
We're glad you're doing it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.